Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's Sunday morning, a little after 11 a.m. So we'll get started. Of course, if you joined us on yesterday, you know that we had one discussion. We talked about what was going on in Israel, the ramifications of that, looking at it from a spiritual perspective, and kind of talking about it the way we do, looking at it that. The enlightenment of the spiritual side of things, and so we had a good discussion on that yesterday, and I want to kind of continue in that direction, and I even have a question if no one else does, but I guess we first just I want to make sure that no one has anything else that's important to you or that has grabbed your attention that you may want to discuss first, a question or a comment. Anyone? Anything else that may have grabbed your attention? Well, I'll say my question till later then. Are there any questions on what we discussed yesterday or anything that you may have seen in the news regarding this?
This is Vermel. I have a
Good
question.
morning.
Yes, ma'am.
I can see somebody else was going to ask something.
I yield. Go ahead.
Okay. Sage, we talked yesterday about Israel and that they made this area of land part of their nation. For Palestinians, they're like the natives to that area of land. Is that my understanding of it? Is my understanding correct?
Would you say that again, Vermel?
Okay. The Palestinians, the land that's being fought over now, the Gaza Strip area, they are, quote, like our Native Americans to America. That is where they originally lived. They're native to the land is my question.
Yes.
Okay. Does Palestinian have a meaning? A meaning?
It does. I'm sure someone is looking for that meaning as we speak, because I don't remember what it is.
Okay.
But I would also encourage you to look up the etymology of Jew.
Etymology of Jew?
The etymology of that word, Jew. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I looked it up, but I want you to look at it for yourselves. Then we'll talk about it later. Good.
Okay.
Okay. If anyone has looked at the meaning of Palestine, would you share it with us, please? Okay. As soon as we look at it, we'll come back, Ron. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, someone look that up, please, and we'll discuss that. Someone else had a question.
Good morning. This is Jackie.
Hey,
I was
Jackie.
looking at, good morning. I was looking at CBS this morning, the segment about Israel and how it was founded, but I wasn't clear, and it's not a coincidence, but I woke up with this on my mind. Then I saw CBS, the segment on that this morning, which I think that was the focus this morning, but I don't know enough to talk about it, but I've just been praying for peace, but I don't know the history, even though they touched on it a little bit this morning. I just wasn't clear, and I just wanted you to go into it. And I know you guys, I think you mentioned it, that you guys talked about it yesterday, and I wasn't on yesterday. So I was going to send you a text and ask you to just give me some clarity, because I just didn't know enough to talk about it. Thank you.
We went deeply into that yesterday, and I don't know what you don't understand, so I don't know which one to say, where to start rather. So I would suggest, if you don't mind, that you listen to what, were you on yesterday, Jackie?
I was not.
Okay, because we delved very deeply into that, right? And I would suggest that you probably listen to that. The reason being, in order to clarify or to address rather what you heard this morning, would take as much time as it did for us to clarify yesterday, probably. So, with an overview, we simply talked about the origin of Israel and that land mass was divided between that land mass was taken rather for Eastern Europeans who call themselves Jews, and to this day is being controlled by Eastern Europeans who call themselves Jews, and they tried to drive the Palestinians out, just like as Vermeer stated earlier, the English or the English drove the Native Americans off of their land into what they call reservations. But beyond that, I would suggest very strongly, because there are so many things that were talked about yesterday that were interconnected. I'm afraid we'll miss something. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Maybe someone's having better luck than I am looking at Palestine. I'm finding a lot of stuff about the geographical location and the history of it, but nothing about the meaning of the name. So someone else may have some other sources to look at. In the meantime, do we have any other questions, comments?
I have a question to ask.
Okay.
A lot was talked about yesterday. I don't know if this was covered. They said that Israel has the best intel in the world, yet this event happened. So the question of the matter is, did they know? And if they did know, how does the citizens in that area feel knowing that their country could have stopped this? Because there's a lot of missing people, and a lot of people are pleading with others to, hey, help me find my family member.
They knew. The American Intelligence Agency told them that there was something brewing in the Gaza Strip on September 28th. And they reiterated it, I think it was the 6th of October. And again, the day before it happened. So it was 2 days in October, the first part of October. And it was one day in September that the American intelligence told Mossad intelligence in Israel that something was being planned or staged in Gaza. So the question then becomes, why did they not do anything about it? I do believe that it was not so much them not doing anything about it as it was two things. The universe allowed this to happen because never in the history of these encounters, of these wars, has a large number of people publicly challenged what Israel is doing and saying until now. And believe you me, there are repercussions being meted out to people who are telling the truth about not only what is happening, but what has happened in the past during the course of these wars. People are telling the truth about Israel intermittently turning off the water supply and the cutting off the food supply and fuel supplies, and for weeks, if not months at a time, to increase the suffering. And the second thing is that I believe it was allowed to happen by Netanyahu because he saw it as an opportunity to drive Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip. Israel has been trying to get rid of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank ever since where the Accords were they? Oh God. Anyway, this agreement was signed to push them into the Gaza Strip as well as the West Bank. This is no different than the English did to remove Native Americans from their land that they wanted. And the same thing with Israel. In order to get rid of the Palestinians, they used terrorist tactics to get rid of them. So they used car bombs, they bombed their homes, they drove them out of their homes at gunpoint. They did all kinds of things to get them out off of that land. And during the course of the war in 48 and in the early 50s, they moved them into refugee camps, which really is concentration camps. They moved them into refugee camps in Jordan and in Syria. And as a result of that, they minimized the number of Jews, the number of Palestinians that was left in the landmass. And over the years since that, what they have done is consistently push them off the land, but they have never allowed them to return from their camps. They have never allowed them to return from the camps. So the reason that Egypt will not allow them to come into Egypt from Gaza is because they know that Israel is trying to force them into Egypt, and they are not going to allow them to come back into Gaza. So Israel's motive behind your question, I hope I'm answering it rather with clarity, is to rid that landmass of all Palestinians, with the exception of those who fall in line and play the game with them. I hope that helps you, young lady.
It did. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Good morning. This is Audrey.
Good morning.
I'd like
Good
to
morning,
add
Audrey.
something to that.
Go ahead.
I kind of believe Netanyahu allowed it to happen too, because since he became prime minister again in this last election and then trying to form a coalition government, he's put in a lot of right-wing people, and they have been trying also to quote unquote reform the justice system. And their idea of reforming the justice system is to take away a lot of the power of the judiciary, who has been the only check and balance for Netanyahu and his party. So the judiciary has been the only check and balance for his party. So and there have been recently, I'll say within the last 3-4 months, there have been a lot of people out protesting against him, trying to take away the power of the judiciary. So I think part of the reason he let it happen was to take attention away from that so he could do whatever he could do behind the scenes, while everybody else was focusing on the Gaza Strip. But I think he probably bit off a lot more than he can chew, because the sentiment is not really in favor of Israel right now, especially when his defense minister stated that he would commit a war crime on camera, like cutting off the food, the water, and the electricity. So I think Netanyahu wanted it to happen to take the attention away from what they're trying to do there with the judiciary, but I don't think it's going in his favor right now. Anyway, thanks.
Well, thank you. I agree with everything that you said, because that's the reality there, as well as the reality in this country right now. This is all about controlling people of color worldwide. This is all about diminishing the humanity of people of color in that area and worldwide. And if you think about what Audrey said, but not about Netanyahu, and also connect that with what's happening in regards to the Jews, the response rather to this war in this nation, you will find that white folks in this country, especially the Democrats and the so-called old school Republicans, are actually badgering people to trying to force them to believe what's being said in regards to Palestine and Israel. They are bullying people by virtue of threatening their jobs, and by virtue of, but when they call them anti-Semitic. You in this country can say anything you want to say about anyone in this country except Jews. If you say that Netanyahu is wrong, you're anti-Semitic. If you say there was no such country as Israel to 1948, you're anti-Semitic. So unless you agree with and toe the line that's being put out there, you are anti-Semitic, which is another way of saying you hate Jews. Now, people are no longer being bullied. They're not accepting it, regardless of the price that they have to pay. So here we are in a place where I do believe, as Audrey said, that Yahweh allowed it. And I also believe that it was the universe who guided it, and he did not realize that. And I also agree that he has bitten off more than he could chew, because right now there are more people who understand the dynamics of what's happening than ever before. And the only reason that they've been able to get away with it is because Americans are the dumbest people on the face of the earth when it comes to politics, history, and economics. America, because of evangelicals, America truly believes that those Eastern Europeans are Jews. Americans believe that. Americans didn't even know that Israel was established in 1948 until this particular war. Most Americans knew nothing about that. And even when it was said, they didn't believe it, because the white people had not said anything about it. but now it's a different day, and we have the opportunity to transform everything on this earth, inclusive of that. This is one of the last vestiges of apartheid, not the, but one of the last vestiges of apartheid or on this earth. I'm done.
Good morning, everyone. One of the things about Israel from a historical aspect, they have always been a bully by default, and they've only been able to be a bully by getting support. So if they, by going to war with Palestinians or Palestine, I don't think mentally they can deal with Palestine and that kind of thinking. One thing I do remember under Obama's leadership, he stated in a press conference or on the TV, Israel, you will always be our friend. And when Trump got in office, Trump told Israel, you will pay us if you want our protection. So Israel going to war with the Palestinians, I think is going to weaken them because, just my opinion, they've been the bully by default by having the United States back them. You look at their military, if they don't have one of the lowest in personnel, they have the lowest in terms of numbers. So I don't think it's going to fare well for Israel. Thank you very much.
George, the support that they get from the U.S. when when Trump made that statement that you go pay us, that was empty, because there is a permanent line in the U.S. budget that sends no less than $2 billion per year to Israel to support them, to help sustain that state. Now keep in mind that Americans, white Americans, have never liked Jews. If they loved them, how come they wouldn't let them come into this country when they left Europe? Why is it Britain wouldn't let them, England would not let them come in that country? They did not want them here. And the reason they didn't is, look at that etymology of that word, you'll see. But they did not want them in this country. So they got together and sent them to that place. They didn't send them to that landmass because they loved them. They sent them to that landmass because they wanted a white colony in that part of the world that was armed to the teeth so they could control that part of the world. But they found out that they could not control Iran. And when they saw that they could not control Iraq, look at what they did. And they dealt with Saudi Arabia. They interfered in Saudi Arabia to the extent that they got the current leader who they wanted in place so that they could have another step towards controlling the Arab world. So what Trump said was empty. And if you two also remember, Netanyahu came during the Obama administration at the invitation of Congress to speak to Congress and did not make any contact with Obama at all. And I'm talking about prior to his coming, and a head of state, that is not protocol. But he's a racist, just like the ones who invited him and just like the ones who are in power now. Thank you.
Well, I tend to agree a bit with George because Netanyahu, I read the other day that he's dropped like 6,000 bombs on Gaza.
Yes.
In the last few days. 6,000. And where is he getting the replacements for all of those?
They flew them in the
Probably from the
second day, Audrey.
US.
No, not probably. Audrey, they flew those bombs in there the second day. The
Right.
second day they were, yeah,
I mean,
that's what they get.
talk about an arrogant bully. They could use that many bombs and then feel like, oh, they'll be replaced.
Yeah.
It's
There
just
was something,
unbelievable what they're doing. Unbelievable.
there's something else to that. It does not matter how many bombs you drop. You cannot control a landmass without boots on the ground. You can drop all the bombs you want. You're going to kill people indiscriminately, but you have no control until you put boots on the ground. And when you put boots on the ground, that's where the rubber meets the road. Let's see what happens. If you study invasions into Haiti, what you will find is that the Haitians dug trenches, and they were not wide, but they were very narrow but deep trenches. And when the tanks rolled into Gonaïves, they got stuck in those trenches, and they threw oil and gasoline on the tanks and set them afire. My point is this: when people get sick and tired of being sick and tired of the way you treat them, they find ways to fight back. And the ingenuity that goes into finding those ways to fight back, to fight for survival, is not something that this country, Israel, or European armies have in common. They don't know how to innovate. They don't know how to stop them, because you cannot stop people who want to be free. You can't do it. Anyone who wants to be free is willing to die. You can say anything you want to say about the Palestinians. They're willing to die, so they must be crazy. Look at the Japanese kamikaze. Well, America did the same thing in Midway. Those pilots didn't come back. They knew that they weren't going to have enough fuel to come back. But the Japanese are crazy, the Americans are not. So this thing has been ongoing for the last 500 years or more, where Europeans have made every effort to displace the people of color and replace them with themselves, so they would be in a position to take any resources and to control any uprising. That has been especially with the help of America. If that sounds familiar because of the slave uprisings, it is the same thing. The same principle, no different. No different. And in slave uprisings, what happened? They knew they were going to die if they got caught. They knew they were going to be brutalized, and they did it anyway. Why? When you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, your fight is to free your people. Even if you die. And I don't think a lot of people understand the depth of that. They understand sleeping under a house. They don't understand being shot at more times than you can count by clans. They don't understand what you are willing to give up to be free. So anyway, I'm done. Let me get off my soapbox. Ron.
This is Ron. And I found something here, and I want to read this to you. I did not know that the name Palestine and Philistine comes from the same root. As we know, the Philistines were the thorn in Philistines. Yes, excuse me, were the thorn in the sides of Israel while they were in the desert, and you see a lot of combativeness with them in the Old Testament. But it comes from a verb. It means palish, palish, P-A-L-A-S-H. And it means to roll around in ashes or dust due to intense grief, to grieve heavily, to be grief-stricken. So I don't know if anybody else found anything else on that, but that's what I found.
I'm Ron. Hey, this is Barbara.
Hey, Bob.
Palestine was originally Canaan, that area.
Right.
And it was what we usually call the Holy Land. But what I saw was that the word Palestine comes from a name given to it by Greek writers. So your what you found probably goes back further than what Greeks would call it. So, what did you say, Palestine? What did you say? What did you say?
It comes from P-A-L-A-S-H. P-A-L-A-S-H. And that word means to grieve heavily, to roll in ashes because you have intense grief. But you're right, it is the land of Canaan. It's I saw that too somewhere. And
But it's interesting what you just said. It's interesting what you said about the intense grief to roll in ashes, because that implies what's happening now.
Yeah.
And what's going on now. The intense grief of the people having to leave their country, their land, because they fear they will not be able to get back to it. And the fear is based on what's happened in previous times when they were made to leave their land, and wherever they went, they were not treated well at all. So that's interesting.
Well, Bob,
thank you.
Even based on what you're saying, the history of it being Canaan, for those who don't understand the scriptures and take them literally, these people have always been kicked around. God saying this is the land of milk and honey, and this is going to be your land. We are just moving to a place where we understand what that means spiritually. But this place has always been grief-stricken. It's always been a place of turmoil and chaos because people coming in to occupy the land. So, it's just it's a history that maybe we're now looking at it to bring it into it, bring some clarity and understanding of what that truly means. So just as Audrey was talking about earlier, when I forget what lesson we were a few weeks ago, maybe we have an opportunity to change the name or make it mean something else.
I think we do. Looking up the etymology of it as a verb, it means to cheat, to drive a hard bargain. This word Jew is compared to the word for gypsy as well. I read something else that went more depth into the meaning of that word. Let me look for that again while you go on, Ron.
Good morning, Reverend Richard, quick question, or anyone else can answer. I've always associated the gypsy with palm reading and tarot card reading. What's the historical aspect? Because Hitler did kill gypsies and killed other people too. So other than palm reading and things of that nature, what else should I know about the gypsy? Is it just a female colony, or is it gypsy male and female, or how does it go?
The word gypsy came into the English vernacular. There were a group of people who were servants to the students in London at Cambridge University, and they were called gypsies because they were accused of stealing from the students, and that's where that word gypsy originated. And it came. The word is the root from that word was introduced into the vernacular by the Greeks, and it came from a word gyps, which means vulture, and the English used that word to describe those who were servants to those in schools in London.
Most of those people came from Eastern European countries,
Yep.
Probably starting with the Armenians, who were slaughtered and run off their land back in when did that happen?
That was that in
Ottoman Empire or something like that?
yeah. Was it the 20s? I think it happened.
World War I think, or maybe it was started, but I remember reading about that as well. About that time, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
When did that
remember
war?
exactly the time frame, but I think it started with them, with people from Eastern European being made refugees because they were nomadic. They didn't have a place to be, a home to live in. So I think it started from then, from the Ottoman Empire.
I got a question. Mr. Charles, I hope Reverend Ron can, tell me, is that true or not? I was reading that that is the Holy Land, and not only that, I was reading that it said that's where Jesus was born, and that's where his ministry started. And how it happened in the Israel land where he was born at, like Nazareth.
Charles.
Yes, sir.
When Jesus was born in that area, it's called Canaan, actually, and Jesus was born in a city called, I think it was Galilee, and his birth took him to Egypt because they were seeking to kill him. But more importantly, Jesus was not a Jew. Again, Jesus was a Palestinian. He was a Canaanite. He was not an Eastern European. So that's it, y'all. We have been blinded by virtue of what we have been taught, especially in the church, and the idea of Canaan being holy land. Being holy means that something has been set apart for a reason, for a purpose. And the people in that region saw Jerusalem as being the center of the world because of the spiritual energy that permeated that area. And Jerusalem has been contaminated by the Eastern Europeans who have taken it over. If these Eastern Europeans had knew anything about the Bible, about the Old Testament, they never would have called themselves Jews. They'd have called themselves Hebrews. But they didn't do that, probably because it's very difficult to convince anyone that that you're a Hebrew when you are Eastern European, because everyone knows the skin tones of the Hebrews. So they invented a word. They took a word from Judah and did not realize that the word that they used instead of Judah was a word that was actually a demeaning word. And they also did not realize that their understandings of the Old Testament is totally wrong when they talked about, and I don't want to get into it this morning, when they talked about Moses and the Ten Commandments. Moses was reared in Egypt. And in Egypt, it was a requirement to read the 42 laws of Ma'at 3 times a day. And Moses didn't leave Egypt till he was 85. So with him, now these laws were written 2,000 years before Moses was born. So when he went to Egypt, they were already there. And everyone had to read them 3 times a day, especially in the schools. And when Moses left, he just took 10 of them. And they are the 10 Commandments. And they were probably the 10 that he remembered. So when you attribute the 10 Commandments to Moses, what we're actually saying spiritually is that out of the 42 laws of Ma'at, there are 10 that that would suffice if we were to follow them. And 5 of those laws that were taken and called the 10 Commandments tells us about our relationship with our spiritual self, with our Creator. The next 5 speaks to the relationship that we have in this physical world with each other. So when you talk about the Holy Land, this is in this land mass that's called Canaan. And the idea of milk and honey was not a land that was necessarily going to be fertile for farming. The land of milk and honey, a consciousness and awareness of milk and honey, and awareness that you can live by, you can be nurtured by. Milk is used to nurture a baby and children. And you could live from honey. Raw honey, you don't have to eat anything except honey, and you can live. So the idea of the land of milk and honey is speaking to the spiritual nature of knowing who you are, and speaking to the life that you the lifestyle that you perpetuate by embracing the spiritual understandings of these condensed laws. And I hope you understand what I'm making an attempt to say. If there's anyone who understand what I'm saying, would you help me with it, please? Oh, Ron? Oh, 1915, Audrey. With the Ottoman Empire massacring the Armenians.
Sorry?
The Armenians were massacred, started in 1915.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
you made
World War
mention to
Yes.
yeah, because the same thing happened in World War I that happened during World War II. No one would take them in, and no one would go to their aid. The whole world knew that they were being slaughtered, and no one would come to help them. And as they tried to flee to other lands, no one would accept them. So,
And you were bullet. You can't talk
Yeah.
about that because you get bullet for talking about that. That is one of the things that's truly omitted. Anyway, I think that everything that we've talked about up to this point, it's added understanding to the, for lack of a better term, the outline and the words that put meat on the bones of the outline. I think today is filling in spaces of what we talked about yesterday, and primarily a Q&A for an understanding of, a Q&A in terms of making clear those things that we are getting questions about. And I encourage you to raise questions, to offer comments, because it is absolutely, positively, unequivocally imperative that we get an understanding of what's happening now. Has nothing to do with this physical world, but a spiritual understanding. If you don't have a historical understanding, then it is difficult for you to have a spiritual understanding. And without that spiritual understanding, it's difficult for you to embrace the nature or the energy of change if you don't know the reason change is necessary. I hope that makes sense to you guys.
Thank you, Pastor.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. You're welcome. There are those who don't see a connection between this natural world and the spiritual world. When we talk about we are to make this world as below, so what is it? As above, so is below. It speaks to order. It speaks to balance. As there is order in the realm of the spirit, there must be order brought to this material realm. And the bringers of the order to this material realm are, are on the shoulders of the African. Always have been, always will be. And it's imperative that we embrace that, regardless of how browbeaten we have been, regardless of how dehumanized we have, in spite of the dehumanization that we've experienced, we still have on our shoulders the task of bringing order to this earth. So why do I say that? Because it's true. If our life of humans came from the womb of an African woman, and if we are, as Africans, the most spiritual people on this earth, then it is our obligation to bring an understanding of spirituality to those on this earth who don't have an understanding, who have misinterpreted, who really don't care. Even those who don't care, we are obligated to offer balance, order, and however that balance and order presents itself, so be it. There are wars and have always been wars that pricked the hearts of humanity and brought humanity to a place of being human by virtue of feeling the pain of those who are suffering at the hands, under the authority of those who seek to destroy them completely. And the very people who whose attempts have been made to destroy are the very people who's needed in this earth in order for life itself to exist in this earth. So I guess what I'm saying, I suppose what I'm saying to you is this. The only reason that we have been told that history and the Bible are separate studies is because they don't know any better. Those of us who have been awakened spiritually, whose eye has opened, understand that it is impossible to talk about the true essence of spirituality based upon the book, meaning the scriptures and other sources. It is impossible to understand without understanding and being honest about history itself. The honesty about history is important. What people don't realize, particularly in this nation and in Western Europe, and well, really Europe, period, what they don't realize is that when they talk about disdain for the browning of America, when you talk about that, they must understand that there are only light-skinned Africans. So regardless of what your skin tone is, your origin was in Africa, period. And the truth about that has been hidden in order for white supremacy and superiority to remain alive in this world, not just America, but in this world itself. And what we are seeing around the world is that extreme right-wing people are being elected, males in particular, are being elected to office for the purpose, express purpose of keeping the authority around the world in the hands of white men. Well, that in itself must be understood. These things are being allowed so that all of the underhanded racism that has been meted towards us and people around the world is visible now. And the visibility of it brings about a deep desire for change, not just in the hearts of people of color, but also in the hearts of Caucasians worldwide. That deep-seated desire for change is not something that grew out from that someone woke up one morning and said, this is what we're going to do. That deep need for change has always been present in this earth. And the reason it has not been exposed to the degree that it is now is because everyone is seeking change through voting. Everyone is seeking change through wars. Everyone is seeking change based upon political systems worldwide. When in actuality, the only true change comes not from the barrel of a gun, but the only true change comes from the hearts of the Africans who is obligated to open their eye and see what the problems are in this earth and deal with them. The idea of waiting for God, Creator, to deal with this, that's not going to happen. When Yeshua said, it is finished, Yeshua was saying that the thing that is finished is your instructions as to what you are to do in this earth. It's up to you now. So you must become aware of the essence of your being and understand the nature of those who have denied you this all of these years. You have to get an understanding that it's in you. And here we are, seeking to understand from the original tongue, the original writings, and put it in the macro for the benefit of everyone on this earth. Humanity cannot survive without the understandings of what spirituality means. And there are those who will dispute what I'm about to say. It doesn't matter about the disputing it. It's true. We talked about earlier about the nation that was born on the waters, as was mentioned in the book that's about the 1619 Project, where it talks about us being a nation born on the waters, doing the transport from Africa to these shores and to other shores around the world, but specifically these shores. That nation that was born on the waters remained a nation until the 70s. That nation was a nation even during the period of enslavement. A nation, as we have talked about earlier, speaks to the idea of everyone taking care of each other. That's a nation, making sure that everyone is seen after and no one is in a state of suffering without help. That's a nation. Country boundaries care nothing about anyone except those who are in power. That's Sodom. Care nothing about the poor. That's Sodom. That's a country. The nation stayed intact in the 70s because during the period of enslavement, we looked out for each other. Of course, you had some and we didn't. But the majority, overwhelming majority of us, we took care of each other, regardless of whether or not we are biologically connected. During the period of Reconstruction, the same thing prevailed through the Civil Rights Movement, but in the 70s, large numbers of us were graduating from colleges and universities like never before and bought into the idea of America, this country, America. The corporations cracked the door and let 2 or 3 in, and And we thought that we had arrived, and we embraced everything that our oppressors is. We embraced the notions that every tub must sit on his own bottom, meaning that you take care of yourself. I'm going to take care of me and mine. And then it has grown to the place where the me and mine is not even being taken care of. This is the mentality of the Europeans who colonized the world. That's the mentality. So what we are doing at this juncture is awakening the beast, meaning that we are awakening the notion of a nation. And we are awakening it to the extent that we are reaching out to take care of each other. The difference is that not only are we taking care of each other in terms of Africans, we are waking up and understanding that we are also supposed to take care of our oppressors, because our oppressors don't know any better. And those who know better do better, not just on their own, but they do better by teaching others how to be better, how to open that eye so they can see. By example, being expressive of empathy, so others can see what empathy looks like, feels like. That's where we are. And that the truth of what I'm talking about, what we've also talked about, the truth of it is the very power that is able to bring us together as humans, as opposed to skin color separating us. It's about being humans. You cannot truly be Elohim if you're not first a human. Humans have certain characteristics of empathy, loving kindness, expressive of mercy. All these things are the attributes of being human. And when you are human, your eye opens, and then you begin to see how you function as Elohim, as opposed to being dysfunctional as a citizen of a country, as opposed to being a part of a nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is
Any
Richard. I
questions?
got a quick question, comment, just to catch up a little bit. I mean, to try to bring it back up into my mind, because so when we hear the expression and phrase "Nation of Israel," how should we understand that? Now, I know the political time, I know all that stuff, the complicated political
Right.
aspects, etc. I'm just wondering. Anyway, because you're
Just
gonna hear that, you're gonna maybe have conversations, or you're even gonna say it yourself without fully
yes,
understanding what you're saying. And if I can say one other little footnote, we really should not be using the term gypsy. It's a derogatory term. You can look it up. It's all over the place. It's not a strange history. Okay. The name of the peoples are the Romani. That they came from India. Anyway, but it just made me start thinking. So when I hear someone talking about the nation of Israel, and I'm not talking about the country of Israel, I mean it conceptually, metaphorically, spiritually. Anyway, I'll just leave it there because there are other similar namings and things that we say without thinking fully or without understanding fully what we're saying. Does that make any sense?
it does. It makes all the sense in the world. And I agree about the term gypsy wholeheartedly. It is indeed derogatory. But when I hopefully we talk about the nation of Israel is simply because it has been subliminally put into our vernacular, our language, our teachings. We are taught that it's a nation of Israel because the scripture talks about the nation of Israel, and they are not the same. They are not synonymous. The scriptural notion of the nation of Israel speaks to those who are committed to being the essence of who they were created to be. And that is that without regard to where you're located. The idea of a geographical location called the nation of Israel is no different than the surface understanding that evangelicals have of the scriptures. Those Eastern Europeans have a surface understanding of the scriptures. And we have been taught all of these years that Israel is a geographical location, and that is non-existent, and that no landmass was referenced as Israel until 48. And now, if we really look at it the way it's being said, if you look at the etymology of the word Jew, you will not find it in the scriptures. You will find how it got into our vernacular. Therefore, if you're calling yourself a Jewish nation or the nation of Israelis, and the word Jew and your practices are not synonymous with the scriptures, then you are labeling, is no different rather than labeling a dryer as being a stove. Just because you call it a stove, it doesn't make that dryer a stove. Just because you call yourself the nation of Israel, when you in essence are European occupation force, it doesn't change the essence of that landmass being Canaan. It actually speaks more to the devious ignorance that has flooded the mindset of those who have sought to use made up religious terms in order to subjugate people. I hope that makes sense to you, Richard.
Reb, a quick question for you.
Sorry, I was just trying to,
George, hold 1 second.
no, that's okay. I was just
Richard.
trying to get the mute off. I get a few things open.
Okay.
It does. And it's not that I don't understand it or didn't. It's just sometimes stuff gets a little jumbled up because I'm not actively thinking and using those terms. But for myself, I want to start being sure I'm using them in the proper context. In other words, I don't want to say gypsy anymore, by example. We say it too casually. That's just not you can't do it you shouldn't do it that way. You've got to discipline yourself and educate yourself to just say it the right way. So it'd be the same if I'm talking to somebody and they're talking about the nation of Israel or the nation of Islam for that matter. Just want to be sure that I have kind of the basics to participate properly in any kind of discussion around that. That's all.
Okay, Richard, let me say it for you. To use the term gypsy is no different than using the N-word. Those people who primarily came out of Romania via India, came out of India via Romania, were treated the same way and still to this day as we have been treated and are treated. And that term was very derogatory, just like the N-word. Thank you. Does that express what you're saying, Richard, in terms of not using that word?
Well, it's just, I could be in a conversation and somebody's talking about Israel, for example, and you want to say, okay, wait a minute. And you're not trying to be aggressive or antagonistic, but you're saying, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about the physical geographic country? Or are you talking about something much more fundamental, basic, and spiritual than that? Because that's where the chaos comes from, not the
Yes.
physical country. It's what's, I think, it's what's all behind it, which makes people think they have a right to certain things. So if you get in that kind of, my problem is in my experience with the people I know who are Jewish, most of them, you can't get 2 minutes into the conversation without them wanting to shut you down and say, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to talk about it. And I'm like, if I'm ignorant, if I don't know it correctly, help me. But anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. George? Unless somebody want to ask a question about what Richard said. Go ahead, George.
When Jimmy Carter was in office, it was either when he was in office or post being president, he had a good relationship with Sadat and Israel, and I believe that they formed some kind of treaty. And yet, how did that benefit South Carolina? Because South Carolina would pay either his daughters, Sadat daughters, or Sadat wife like $3 million a year. And if you're not familiar with it, are you familiar with that, Reverend Richard? Or are you not familiar with that?
I am familiar with part of it. I'm not familiar with the $3 million aspects of that, but I am familiar with the interaction between Sadat and Jimmy Carter, yes.
Okay, just a quick correction there. Sadat was the president of Egypt, not Israel.
You're right. But I am Sadat and Carter. What did they do? They had Camp David Accords, that's what it was. Sadat and the leader of Israel at that time, was it Golda Meir? Can't remember, but those three sat down and hammered out what is called the Camp David Accords. And as a result of Sadat's participation in that, he was assassinated. So.
Anwar Sadat was Israel's prime minister. I'm sorry, Egypt's president was Anwar Sadat, and the prime minister was Begin, Menachem Begin.
Menachem Begin. And boy, can I tell you some stories about him? Anyway.
And right, and you had Yasser Arafat for the PLO.
Yes.
And interesting how it seems like 10 lifetimes ago. But anyway.
It does. I remember. Well, our group had interaction with Yasser Arafat and his representatives years ago. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just a very small little factoid. I read Anwar Sadat's book, and it's very much like the experience Mandela had. Just going through a self-examination process and understanding the only way to truth and forward was peace and collaboration and that. And like Mandela said, you don't have to love your enemies, but you got to work with them. So, but Sadat was very much that way, and I think he was murdered for the same reason. And probably, who was it? Itzhak Rabin in Israel was shot in a public demonstration for the same kind of thing, an extremist group that just couldn't fathom the collaboration that he was proposing.
And the reason they couldn't
anyway,
is because they saw it through the eyes of earth consciousness as opposed to the eye of spiritual reality. That's the reason things deteriorated so rapidly. And that's the reason that nothing really has changed, because there has not been an onslaught of self-awareness to the extent that we are honest about the representation or what spirituality is. We're honest about so many different things. One in particular is this whole idea about immaculate conception with Mary in terms of Jesus. If you 2100 years, no, 4100 years before Jesus was born, that story about the Immaculate Conception was inscribed on the walls of the temples in Egypt. So there are a lot of things that we are seeing that are not only are they misinterpreted, but they don't know the origin of them, and that's why there's no understanding of them, and everything is attributed to this caste of white men who are Moses and who are Abraham, who are Isaac and Jacob, etc. When in essence, that is non-existent, always have been. That is, and the reason that the stories were repeated and recorded is because this is our Creator telling us how we are to make this earth consciousness the same as the consciousness of spirituality. You will see from the beginning the same things, the same principles that we are reading in the scriptures are the same principles that came out of what we call Egypt. And I'm going to look up the real name. It's not Kemet, it's something else. I'm going to look up the real name of that so we can begin talking about what it was labeled as in terms of name, and get an understanding that everything, there is nothing new under the sun, says Solomon. That nothing new under the sun is talking about principles. Every principle of spirituality, every principle of greed, hatred, brutality, barbaric mindsets, all of that has been here forever, because it is up to those who are self-aware, those who know who they are, to bring a change, not bring a change by hurting anyone, but bring a change by changing everyone, opening the eye so that we can see. Because when your eye is open, not only do you see, but you also feel. Your emotions are sharper. Evelyn talks about crying and don't know why she's crying. She talks to us about that all the time. She feels like screaming. It's because when your eye is open, you're more sensitive to everything. Your emotions surface in a way that they never surfaced before. And you feel it. And your tears are a manifestation of what you are experiencing. The pain, manifestation of what you're experiencing. The sorrow that we are expressing for those who are in that Gaza Strip being bombed. That also is the awakening, the opening of the eye, sensitizing the emotions to a greater degree. Not only that, but this empathy that we have for those who were killed in Israel, or in that place, Canaan rather, we have empathy for them, because those are lives that were removed from those bodies. Those are people who are suffering in pain because their family members are missing or dead. So you cannot be who you are in terms of being, know who you are rather, in terms of being Elohim, if you cannot feel empathy for even those for those in Israel, just as the empathy is there for the Palestinians. You cannot do that. It is not about taking sides. It is about facing reality. It is about being God, being Elohim to everyone on this earth. And when you are Elohim to everyone on this earth, you have empathy for them. You are not angry like the metaphor about Moses is, and throwing breaking the tablet out of anger. You are about speaking and saying, do not destroy these people, because they were saying you couldn't keep them. What is that saying? We are supposed to be speaking to the idea, the principle of delivering everyone, not just us as a people, but everyone from the bondage of ignorance, hatred, greed, so that all of us can experience the empathy that we have for each other. I'm done. Ron?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Hi,
George. Was that clear with George? Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, and it wasn't that the state of South Carolina was paying Sadat's wife for children. It was the University of South Carolina. Yet they didn't teach a class or anything like that. My homeboy just shot me the text message. Thank you very much. That's it.
All right, thank you for the information. Ron?
Okay. I want to read something right quick, and I'll explain in a minute. I'm at the Genesis chapter 49, verse 8. Judah the brother, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. For the prey, my son, you have gone up. He lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. He ties his foes to the vine, and his donkey's coat to the choicest vine. He washes his garment in wine, and his robe in the blood of the grapes. His eyes are dull from wine, and his teeth white from milk. I wanted to read that because Pastor mentioned Judah, and as possibly being the root of the word Jews, as how they come about this. And as you read this, you understand, or you see rather, that it is talking about Judah. Your brothers shall bow down to you, and people shall worship you. The lack of understanding of that. And the reason why I wanted to read it is because part of what we do is bring light to darkness. And if this is the origin of what these people have come to know, what the world has come to know as what Judah is supposed to mean, then that needs to be some light shed on that. So we may not have time today to kind of open all that up for what it means. But I thought it was important why the same people that heard the original message part of this hear this part as well, to so we can all kind of put our energy there to that this light, this understanding be opened up in the earth, so that everybody will know what this name really means. So I just thought that was important. And hopefully one day we'll get to look at it again. Because where it talks about the word praise itself, praise is a recognition. Praise is I finally understand who I am, and I can see now. And it speaks of forgiveness. It's even forgiveness of self. and it speaks of appreciation and gratitude, and it's so much wrapped up in that word. And that is why when I reach that point, that is why I surrender to it. Not because somebody is greater, but it's just, it is each and every one of us, as we've grown to the place where you understand that I say, yeah, God, as you have embraced that and let go of the other, the gratefulness and gratitude is there. And that is what this is talking about. So I just thought that was important to look at that aspect of it. But thank you for listening.
I think that we should definitely expand that possibly tomorrow,
Okay.
because
But
it
it's a lot.
ties into
Yeah.
what we're talking about. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So many things came to mind while you were reading that and explaining it. So maybe we should expand on that tomorrow. Before we go, something came to me strongly, and at some point, I would like to lead a discussion and a Q&A, and based upon our origins out of the Cushite kingdom to where we are now, but of course not year by year, because I don't know it year by year. But being expressive of the principles and bringing understandings like the reality that 4,100 years before Moses was born, what is it? I am died. Those kinds of things. Why are those things important? Why is it important to look at what's happening right now in relationship? What is the spiritual meaning, rather, of the climate that we live in now versus the climate that we have lived in the past? I would like to do that. However, I would like to do it with your permission and understanding. I would like to do it because I would like to do it without necessarily a time limit. Instead of an overnighter, we have it hopefully one Saturday, and we can adjust our schedules accordingly so we can make preparations to have this Q&A, have this historical discussion rather. And if it takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours. If it takes 6, it takes 6. But I would like for us to mull over that, and the facilitators especially. I would appreciate if you could look at your schedules and see if we can find a common date on a Saturday to make that come to life, to bring it, to make that a reality in our lives. I think it would be beneficial to more than just us on the phone. I think it would be beneficial to everyone who is seeking a better way. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Let me ask, what do you guys think about it? Are you with that? Yes? If not, no?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
Terrific. So yeah, probably I want you to remind me, please, because I get caught up in things around here and I forget a lot. I would like for you to remind me as facilitators. I'm going to ask you guys to join me in a Zoom discussion about these things so that we can be on the same page and have a common date in mind when we do that. Okay? Thank you.
Okay.
I'm done. I'm done.
I have one other request before we get off the line, y'all. Someone sent me a text wanted to know how they can get to the recordings. Now, see, when I went in, what I did is I hit something that all of them are sent to me on YouTube, but I don't remember how to get to the original page. It is inpursuitoftruth.org, is it? And then
Yes.
where do you go from to get to the recordings? Does anybody remember? Janice, are you on? Okay. In pursuit of truth.
I'll get it from Janice, and then I'll email it out. How about that? I'll text back to you and Sage, and then you can pass it on to others.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll be very helpful. Yes. Great discussion today, guys. It's a good place to pause for until tomorrow evening. Again, jot down your questions and or comments, and thank you. Thank you very much for all your energy today. Very, very beautiful discussion. Have a great day, okay?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.